Because of Governor Baker's orders and the outbreak of COVID-19, this meeting of the Town of Berlin Select Board will be conducted via remote participation. And proceedings will be available on the town's webpage, the town's YouTube channel, and approved minutes will be posted to mytowngovernment.org. We'll call the meeting to order at 6:34. We might want to do introductions for anybody who doesn't know who we are. I'm Chris Keefe on the Board of Selectmen. Scott?
I'm Scott Hawkins. I am also on the select board.
And Peg?
And bringing up the rear, Peg Stone, also on the select board.
And then we have our town administrator, Margaret Nardowicz.
That's me. Hello.
And tonight we also have our moderator, Barry Ager, who's going to review some of the town meeting dates and scheduled order of articles across meeting dates, COVID-19 health and safety precautions for the meeting, and the handheld voting devices. Barry, I'll hand it right over to you.
Okay. We, of course, are holding our annual town meeting outdoors again, as we did last year, although in a little bit different conditions. We will have a similar kind of a check-in as we did last year, which is the usual check-in that we have with the various checkers, but we also will be distributing various materials. This year, we have a motion sheet, as we did last year, with all the regularly anticipated motions printed on it in roughly final form, as much as we can final form, so that it will make the meeting go faster. People can see the full motions written and so on. In addition to that, we are meeting on Saturday at 1 PM, and we'll plan to spend the afternoon there together as much as we need to finish most of the business of the meeting, and working through the warrant from one on down into the 30s of the articles. After we complete the business that we do on Saturday, either because we get to a point in the afternoon where we want to end, or because we have done the business we expect to do on that occasion, we will adjourn the meeting until Monday at 6:30 PM. And on Monday evening at 6:30 PM, we will undertake the last few articles of the warrant. Even if we don't finish everything Saturday or whatever, we will start the meeting on Monday night with the articles that were set aside for Monday night in the first place. I anticipate most anything should be done, but it's entirely possible we'll have something that we postpone or move over. But we will start the meeting on Monday night with the wetlands bylaw, and then we will follow it up with the citizens petitions, which relate to River Bridge. There are 5 citizens petitions on the warrant, and we will be taking those up on Monday night also. And hopefully we can get that business done within an hour and a half or so, and we'll be in daylight to do it. If we're held up, we do have emergency lighting we will put in place in order that we have enough lighting to continue through the session. Now, all of this is depending, of course, on the weather, since we're outdoors. And if we have a horrible rainy day on Saturday, we may find ourselves doing a lot more on Monday night and also some more on Tuesday night. So we'll see what happens with all of the vicissitudes of weather, and who knows if that is really bad, we may even have to go to another day. But we're hopeful that we can get it done in that time frame. I think that pretty much indicates what the agenda will be in terms of how we'll do that. We'll be following our usual rules and doing things pretty much as we have, but we will be seated in spaces with 6 feet between our chairs and so on, as we've been distancing throughout the past year. And we did that last year, and it worked out fine for us. We will be having seating for perhaps more people, particularly on Monday night, in case we have a bigger crowd. But we'll be prepared for 200 on Saturday and perhaps more on Monday. I would also say that people should plan to follow the protocols we've been following. We've had some modifications recently, and of course we're trying to be sensitive to that. But when arriving and coming into the meeting, it would really be good if people wore masks, as we have been, because then we know that if the line gets closed up or whatever else, people are, when we're all moving around in the same area, it would be much better if we're masked. So we'll expect people to wear masks when they arrive and coming into the meeting. Once you're in your seat, and pretty much as long as you stay in your seat, 6 feet from others, if people want to take them off, I don't think that's going to be a big problem outdoors based on the recent relaxation of requirements. But I do think that if you get up to walk around and move around and go up to speak or whatever, you may want to have your mask on while walking around, or if leaving for other purpose, leaving your seat for some other purpose. That's just a good courtesy, both to our protection to ourselves and to our neighbors, some of whom may not yet be vaccinated. And it's needless to say, the more people that are vaccinated, the better off we are with the whole thing. I will say that the school department has allowed that we will be able to use the toilet rooms in the school. We'll be using the same ones that are outside the gym doors that we would normally use if we were in the gym. But we will have a way to go out, a pathway going out into the courtyard of the school there, and that way, so that we can move into those people that need to use the restrooms can use those inside. And there will be staff assigned to give those some attention in terms of sterilizing them, taking care of them in between people's using them. We're trying to do our best to follow the protocols that we've been following right along, because we're still just making our way out of it, and we're still going to be in the month of May. So that's where we are now, or how we expect to be now. Now, the other piece that is of course new this year is we're going to have electronic voting. This is a new thing for Berlin, but it's not so new for some other towns. At our moderators meetings for the Massachusetts Moderators Association, we've been discussing this and learning about it and hearing about different towns' experiences with it for several years. I've been very intrigued with it. I've been very interested in having it someday, but I've also often felt that I couldn't justifiably ask the town to spend the money for it at that time. We've been fortunate that with some of the funds that have been made available to the town due to COVID-19, that this is a really great thing for us to be able to use the town meeting. It will shorten the meeting. It will lessen the amount of moving around by people during the meeting if we have to take votes. So this is really a great thing, and I think people are going to like it very much. Now we will still use voice votes for many of the things that will go easily and in unanimous votes or near unanimous votes. But if we have division of voting, even if I could declare it, I will call for an electronic vote so that we have an accurate vote. And especially if we have a 2/3 vote or some other special quantum of vote required, we will definitely take an electronic vote. Electronic votes are remarkable because it only takes about half a minute to do an electronic vote for an accurate count of everybody in the meeting. And that is an incredible thing to be able to do very quickly. And it means that we will not use hand votes with raises of hands, because if we're going to count it, we're going to do it electronically. It's quicker and it's more accurate. And it's also more secret. Each voter can vote as they wish without other people knowing how they voted. Secondly, it will replace the paper ballots, because when we have paper ballots, it takes quite a long time to do it. And while we like to do it on very important issues so that we know we have a good count and that everybody gets to vote as they wish and that it's a secret ballot, this is a secret ballot that we can take again in about half a minute. So for electronic voting, you will be issued when you come in a little doodad like this. And it looks like a little bitty cell phone, but it actually is a little voting apparatus. And you will have everybody, each voter will be issued one when they check in. And you will have a lanyard, which goes right through here, so that you can actually hand it around your neck so you won't lose it. And I already lost this one today. I had to go look for the pocket I put it in yesterday. And I looked in that pocket twice and didn't find it. And then when I took my gloves out of the pocket, there it was. But it's small enough that, believe me, it's pretty easy to misplace. So therefore, I strongly suggest that you put the lanyard around your neck and have it hanging there so that you can always find it when you need to in the course of the meeting. You'll be able to see, however, that there is a green button, which is a yes button to vote yes on a question, a red button, which is a no button, and that is to vote no on a question. There is a third button for someone to abstain, but we don't really need to use it because in town meeting, your yes votes and your no votes are all that count. If somebody chooses not to vote or puts a blank in or whatever, it just doesn't count. So therefore, the red and the green are the ones that you need to use. When you press, what will happen is, as we have a question put to you to vote, I will tell you that we are going to open the voting now, and I will be in touch and be paying attention to an individual that will be handling this for us. Now, the company that sold us the equipment will be there on Saturday and Monday, and we'll be able to run this system. And we will have some of our own people working with them so that we're hopeful we'll be able to run it ourselves in the future and not incur that extra expense. But that will work very well for us for this meeting. Now, I will call for the vote. I will say, okay, now we're going to vote now. You will have, say, 20 seconds to vote or 15 seconds to vote. Now, that doesn't sound like very much time, but all you've got to do is grab this thing and push the button. So hopefully one can do that quite quickly. And as you do that, two things will be happening. One is there's a little screen on here, and there will be an indication on this screen that your vote is being counted. Nobody else is going to be able to see it and so forth, but it'll indicate that your vote is being counted. If during the 15 or 20 seconds that we're voting, you say, oh, I pushed the wrong button, I meant to push the other one, you can go right back and push the other one, and it will show you that it has changed the vote the way you wanted it changed. So this will indicate to you that your vote has been counted. At the same time, on a screen, and we will have a couple of screens in the area that people can watch and see this on, as well as one for the town clerk and the moderator. On the screen, it will tell us, a number will keep increasing as people vote. And then when we call an end to the time of the voting, it will display the totals of how many yeses and how many noes there were. It will display that, and everybody will be able to see it, or at least be able to have a shot at seeing it on the screens. If for some reason your own seat is a little more distant, we will announce every one of them. We will read the results for everyone, so everyone can hear them, even if they can't see exactly what the screen does. But that will give us an accurate count of the yes and no votes, and we can declare the votes based on that. And as I say, that whole process takes about 30 seconds. So compared to a hand count, or especially to a paper ballot, it's remarkably short time. And we have a good, accurate count. And I will probably tend to use this on occasions that I might have declared it the old-fashioned way, just by voice vote. But if there's a significant division of opinion, I really think it's important that everybody know that their vote was counted and they'd be able to see what the real count is. And it takes so little time that I think it's a really valid thing that helps everybody see it. At any rate, that's it. Now, the other thing is that when you leave the town meeting, it is very important that you turn in your voting pad. And that is an extremely important thing because these cost money, and we will be able to save them and use them for several years. And that's another important thing. So don't go walking off with them. And we will be we'll be going out when we leave the meeting. We'll be going out through relatively narrow spaces the same way as we check in, except we'll be walking along. But there will be folks there watching to make sure that these are all turned in. And it's very, very important that we get them back because that's money out of the taxpayer's pocket if we don't. I think that pretty much covers what electronic voting is going to be like. It really is pretty simple. And I've watched a town meeting in another town recently on a video of the town meeting in another town last year, and where they were using it, and we could see what the screen was showing and all that. It looked to me like it was pretty easy and pretty straightforward and easy to use, and it fit all the descriptions I've heard from a number of different moderators that I've talked to about this over the years. It really is a great thing and a great opportunity for us to both save money in the meeting and have more accurate counts on many of our votes. So I'd be more than happy to entertain any questions that anybody has, or also to if people have questions that come up, give me a call. I'm more than happy to talk about it. I think I'm pretty well versed on the electronic voting, and we have had Margaret and I and some others had a meeting with the people from the company by Zoom recently, and discussed a number of aspects of it, and it all fits perfectly with everything that I've understood about this kind of a voting system. So that, I think, covers that pretty well. I think
Thanks.
we've covered the sessions. I don't know if there's anything else that in particular that you want me to address.
I think you covered it, Barry. I think you did a great job. If there's no questions for Barry, which he did, oh, we've got one.
Yep.
Rebecca Geldern. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca. Speak up.
Hi, you can hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
Okay. We had two questions. Eric wanted to know how many of the devices we have.
400.
And then the second question was, are immobile children allowed at the session?
Are immobile children allowed at the session?
Yes, are young children with no.
Yes, that's a matter to take up with the moderator personally. The moderator will, children who are moving around and stuff, we usually will try to provide a place for them to be separately, but immobile children, should not be a problem. And all we have to do is make sure they don't say aye or no when we go voting out loud, or that they get to push the button. That might be a slight problem, but other than that, there's no stress.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other questions? Doesn't look like it. Then we're going to move on to Article 33, which is the proposed wetlands general bylaw. The Conservation Commission has 30 minutes, including a question and answer. And I assume it would be John Aney that would be speaking, the chair of the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thank you
Hi,
for
John.
inviting. Hi.
Do you want everybody from conservation up? Chris?
Oh, I thought you were asking John.
No, or John.
John, what do you think? Would you like them to be up?
Why not?
We can always promote them as needed if you'd like, or if they raise their hand, they can be promoted. I guess.
Full house.
Okay. Do you want to start off, John, by giving us like an overview of the proposed wetlands bylaw?
Sure. Thank you. So the Conservation Commission is putting forward a wetland protection bylaw, which would add some extra protection and administrative tools to the Wetlands Protection Act and regulations, which are a state law and associated regulations. This bylaw is actually not, I mean, it's a long document. It has to be a long document for legal reasons, but the salient points actually are not that, are just a few. The extra environmental protections that we add are to include the protection of vernal pools that are neither, potential vernal pools, which are neither part of a larger wetland or have not already been certified with the state. We also protect, this bylaw would protect upland intermittent streams, lowland intermittent streams that are already part of a larger wetland system are protected by the Wetlands Protection Act, but upland intermittent streams are not. As an example, the stream that drains part of the Pisgah area and then goes underneath Linden Street, sort of a little bit uphill from the parking lot area there, that entire stream would not be protected by the Wetlands Protection Act. And a developer could simply do what they wanted if that land were to fall into the hands of the developer. This bylaw also allows studies for wildlife habitat to be considered for large projects. Essentially, what we talk about here, if there was a large section of land in town that was potentially up for development, and there was consideration that there might be a rare species in there, this allows us to get a wildlife habitat study done. This is not, a habitat study to determine deer population or turkey populations. That's not simply relevant. This is not something that would be done if somebody wanted to subdivide their 5-acre lot. This is just for large things. A lot of this data, as Walter had pointed out, is already available on state websites where they can, potentially identify endangered species. This is really a fairly specific thing for large areas. And finally, as far as protection is concerned, this would turn the Berlin 25-foot no-touch policy, which is the Conservation Commission adopted a number of years ago, and turn it into law essentially, so that that it would have the weight of law. Of course, in the bylaw there are statements around grandfathering, and there are also statements around that analysis for of allowing work of various sorts to take place within the 25-foot no-touch zone if there were no practicable alternatives. So those are the things that are this bylaw addresses with respect to environmental concerns. The things that it addresses with respect to administrative concerns are that it allows us to impose fines for violations of this bylaw or for the Wetlands Protection Act and regulations as they currently exist, for people that are are in disregarding our concerns. And it would be our intention never to have to impose fines. The fines are designed to be used to encourage people to follow the law. There are, on occasion, situations where everyone agrees, for instance, that there's been a wetlands violation, everyone agrees what the actions are to be taken. There might be plans that are drawn up that everyone agrees to, but then nothing happens because we can't coerce people to act. They can just drag their feet. And the Department of Environment Protection, although they can coerce people, have been stretched too thin. They are relatively understaffed and underfunded for this part of the state. Another administrative aspect of this bylaw, it would be that it would allow us to charge municipal fees to help offset administrative costs related to various permit actions. For instance, when somebody files a request for termination of applicability, there would be a small fee When somebody files a notice of intent, there would be a fee in addition to what is already paid for according to the state guidelines. The size of the fees would be benchmarked according to what fees towns around us charge. And I've drawn up a spreadsheet of some local towns' fees. Another administrative aspect of this bylaw would be, this one's a little wonky, but it allows the commission and not just the applicant to continue a hearing for just cause. This is just a strange little thing where we actually ask permission for an applicant to continue a hearing, even if there's a very good reason to do so, such as we're requiring an updated site plan. It's just simply crossing a T or dotting an I. The other administrative thing that happens that this bylaw proposes is setting up a 53G account to allow consultants to be paid. Again, this is something that does not really affect single family houses or small projects. This is for large projects where the Conservation Commission and the applicant agrees that we ought to have an environmental monitor. In these situations, the applicant, the developer pays for this environmental monitor to make sure that all the wetlands, the stormwater control and erosion control measures are in place and functioning well. And what would happen is the applicant, the developer pays the town treasurer in advance. The town treasurer sets up an account. The consultant draws down from that account. Any money that's not used up goes back to the applicant after it's done. It just makes sure that there's no hiccups involved in getting the consultant paid. The last thing that part of the summary about what this bylaw addresses is that it permits, if there is a need for arbitration to occur as opposed to just appeal to Superior Court in the Department of Environmental Protection. Say, for instance, that we deny a notice of intent and the applicant feels that this was unjustly done, or a neighbor feels that this was unjustly done, or a neighbor feels that we shouldn't have allowed this to happen, then rather than it having being appealed to Superior Court or to the Department of Environmental Protection, then a mutually agreed upon arbiter would be assigned, someone that has a background in wetland science. The cost of this would be split between the Conservation Commission and the person seeking the appeal, and then we would try to sit down and negotiate. If this didn't work, then it would still go to the next level appeal, but this is just a way to try to keep things within the town, reduce the burden of appeals, and to try to figure out a way of reaching a negotiated settlement. So that is a summary of the major points of this bylaw. Are there questions? Anybody?
Hello, this is the Eric of the Von Gelderns. First of all, I'd like to just say I really appreciate the attention being paid to wetlands and environmental health in the community. So thank you for calling some attention to this. My question is around the fines that are being proposed, and I may have a follow-up question based on the answer. Are the proposed fines in the bylaw as written now?
No. Well, actually, it is. There's just a statement of up to $300 a day. For clarification, because this is related to some other questions that might come up. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. The way this process goes is first there's the law or the bylaw. This mirrors the Wetlands Protection Act and other bylaws in towns. And next come the regulations. The regulations are drawn up after the bylaw is passed. There would be a public hearing to discuss the regulations. The regulations have to get approved by the select board. But that kind of thing, it would be spelled out in the regulations as opposed to the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. My specific concern around fines is, for better or worse, I have the opportunity of working with lots and lots of very, very wealthy people in my career. And when wealthy people see things like fines, they often just look at it as the cost of doing business. So if the intent is to protect wetlands from development that we don't, as a community, want to see in the town, if that's something like another very large condo development or something like that, fines are not going to be something that slows down a developer that has that in heart. So I just wanted to bring that to the conversation. Thank you.
Yes, I would agree. And that's actually not what sort of the fines are designed for, and from my point of view. That would be such a large project that would obviously involve a notice of intent. And the real issue there is, is whether the commission can come to agreement with the developer around a sensible plan that protects the wetlands and the stormwater concerns and the related, nearby habitat or not. And if we decide not, then we would deny the notice of intent. We would be a negative OC or denied OC. And then the developer at that point would appeal probably to DEP Superior Court, unless they wanted to go through arbitration. So the fines wouldn't really apply there. If it was a large project that we gave a positive order of conditions, and then there was some sort of environmental catastrophe, we would probably call in the cavalry, depending on the degree of environmental catastrophe. If, for instance, there was a landslide in the North Brook blocking the river, we would get the EPA and the DEP involved. This would be above our pay grade. The type of stuff that we're talking about is somebody plowing stuff into the wetlands just because they felt like it, and we're saying, well, no, you can't do that. You have to pull it back. Everybody agrees, okay, that's a good idea. We should pull it back. Here's some plans for pulling it back, and then nothing happens. That way we can say, well, listen, we all agreed on this. You need to pull this back, and if you don't, then we'll impose some fines. And that usually is enough to get people moving, in my opinion.
That's clear. Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
It does. I have some other questions around the topic, but not in this context. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, are there any other questions? Beth?
I'd like to say something.
Okay, hi, yeah, this is, okay, can you hear me now?
Excuse me. I didn't know you were calling on someone else. Sorry about that.
Sorry, Beth Stores, 67 Village Court. I am potentially a little late to this conversation. Can somebody just outline for me the various reasons or groups of people who would not be in support of this?
Well, that's a hard question for me to answer because I'm clearly in support of this. I mean, I think people, let me try to answer it this way. I think that I've heard some concerns that, geez, there's enough regulations in the world. Why do we need more regulations? I've heard concerns. Well, geez, you guys seem to be wanting a lot of power, things like that. And then, of course, sometimes people just want to be left to their own devices. In one of the other many forums that we've had, somebody said, geez, you guys seem to get a lot of power from this. And my response then is that the Wetlands Protection Act and regulations already gives the Conservation Commission a fair amount of power over wetlands. It's a strange position to be in, to be sort of like trying to interpret Massachusetts state law with regards to both major and minor programs of development. And we certainly do get consultants when necessary. So a lot of the thing with this document is it has to be long because of prior case law. That it just has to include all that stuff. What we're proposing, the changes we're proposing, I think are important, but you know, they really don't give us this unbridled power. You know, they're really fairly limited additions to the power and authority that the Conservation Commission already has in interpreting the Wetlands Protection Act and regulations, which are substantial documents. And the other thing, I forgot what the other thing was, but I don't know. That's sort of my impression. I mean, I think my sense is when we do sit down and talk to people, I think they can appreciate that we're really just trying to do our best to help Berlin maintain its character and to protect the water and the groundwater supplies, and to make sure there's no, you know, stormwater runoff that are problematic. We're just trying to do our job in, you know, maintaining Berlin as a wonderful place to live. And when we talk to people about that, they usually sort of tend to understand. I don't know if that even vaguely answers your question or not.
No, it does. Thank you.
Okay.
Walter, we have another hand up.
Let someone, yeah, get the other people first.
Okay, Peg, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, just a point of clarification, John, you mentioned if there are regulations to be done that it's brought to the board, but isn't also a public hearing required as well? So it's just not solely based on the board?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. I want to make this, I would want to make this as public as possible,
Okay.
and have the same kind of process that we had with this, where we've actually, you know, over the course of the last 9 months or whatever, year or whatever, I mean, oh geez, I guess it's longer than a year now, but you know, we even modified the document based on feedback, you know, so yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we do have one more hand up. Scott Schultz.
Yes, I have a question is, could you maybe cite some recent experience you have had in town that these changes you'd see being added in would have helped you in specific cases, or things that you know, this would have maybe prevented or altered?
Yes, but I do not want to, because I do not want to make this about specific property holders and specific people. So I really would rather not do that.
How about Scott? Would you be asking just situations? Would that, or does that?
Yes,
help?
I mean, I don't have to worry about names and addresses, anything of that nature, but just some general more descriptions of, even if it's something that is recent, but maybe it's something in the past couple of years. I
mean, I'll talk generalities. You know, was there like a specific, I mean, well, actually, let me talk very generally, which is that a lot of the things that the Conservation Commission is most concerned about are reflexive reactions to specific problems that happened over the last 10 to 20 years. You know, with building right up to the edge of a vernal pool, for example, with, you know, somebody declared what is probably a perennial stream to be an intermittent stream, and then, you know, did some development around that issue. I don't have any examples about wildlife habitat, because the one area I know about that is actually already protected area in 40 caves. There was a case where the 25-foot no-touch policy was directly challenged, and it was overruled by DEP because it's a policy, not a bylaw. You know, there have been, I can absolutely tell you, there's cases where fines would have been useful recently in getting things moving. You know, the filing fee is just kind of I don't know, geez, I mean, there's a lot of paperwork with all this stuff. The continuing the hearing thing really is wonky. I've just been, it's just sort of ridiculous for me to sort of have to sort of make sure that I ask the applicant so I can follow the law. When everybody agrees, it just be continued every way. And with the 53G account, absolutely. There was a recent case where the consultant wasn't getting paid. And I had to interact with the developer and say, come on, what's going on here? And then blah, 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 blah. So this is something that consultants ask for. It just makes their life a lot easier. So there's not an interruption in payment for them. The appeals thing seemed like a good idea. It was suggested it came out of our negotiations with our discussions, not negotiations, our discussions with people about, concerns about the bylaw. That's why it's in there. My experience in talking to other people, other conservation chairs, legal folks, is that it doesn't come up that much. And I don't think it would come up that much because we really do try to negotiate settlements agreements that work for people. We really do want to work with people and get things done. So there's some general examples of all these things.
Okay.
Great, thanks.
Are there any other questions?
Chris,
Yeah.
I wonder if somebody could give a little bit of, since we have dealt with a big wetland bylaw proposal in the past, I'm wondering if somebody could give us an idea of how different this proposal is than perhaps
Yes.
a past proposal.
I'll let Walter
Into
talk.
that.
All
Yeah,
right, Walter.
yeah. Just to put this in perspective for everybody, 220 of the 365 towns in Massachusetts already have this. Berlin's way behind. People still ask me, how did you do it in Berlin? We have one of the greatest little towns there is. We've been very generous in protecting land and keeping Berlin. Our waters are clean, our wells are good, and this is very important. Now, I'm going to confess right up front, and I don't know if this will do good or not. I'm disappointed in it. It's way weaker than it should. It's far weaker than the one that I put together a few years ago, and we really should have had it. I'll give you some examples. We have proposed a 25-foot no-touch zone around wetlands. It's been a regulation that most builders have followed in recent years only because it hadn't interfered with them. The one or two that it did interfere with them, they did what they want. We couldn't enforce it. It's down. The buffer zone, 25 feet. Some towns have 60, 75, 80 feet. Okay, no touch. It's common thing in all bylaws today is a no build zone. We have a 25-foot no touch. I think we should have a minimum of a 50-foot no build. So you could have lawns and stuff, you just couldn't build it. Virtually every other town does. This bylaw would be in the lower 30% strength-wise of the 220 bylaws that the state has right now. It's long overdue. If we can pass this, shame on us as a town. The enforcement is important. We have two severe violations as we sit here talking. One of them's egregious. And by the way, I'll let the commission know later on of one I discovered today, was informed of today, that's pretty egregious too, filling right in on skunk cabbages. These issues they're egregious, but DEP won't be bothered on such a small one. They're so overloaded right now, and we need to have enforcement to protect our waterways. Some people, the wording, you can cut this apart. We had somebody the other day wanted a word shall instead of may. So in other words, they thought they were protecting their right to do something that was grandfathered. Well, if you put shall in there and it happens to be a lawn that's grandfathered and they want to let that lawn grow back to natural coverage, they can't because they shall keep it as a lawn. So all the verbiage here has been tried and tested in the courts. It's constitutionally sound. And we really need this bylaw. The opposition, let me be a little more blunt than the previous explanation. I see Berlin as my hometown. I grew up there in the field, a meadow, a brook that I don't know like the back of my hand. It's a great little town. Some people see Berlin as a big cash cow, and they are going to milk it for all the butter, fat, and heavy cream they can, just as quick as they can. As simple as that. It's going on all around us. You know it, and I know it. What would this bill have done if it was in law before? There's at least 7 structures that I can think of over the past 7 or 8 years that wouldn't have been built where they are. They might have been moved and been able to go in, but there's 3 that never would have gone in because it's just crazy where they happen to be. It's ecologically unsound. This bill, in my opinion, as insufficient as it is, I mean, we got to have something. We've got to do something soon. So I say that we need to pass it and get it going.
Thanks, Walter. Is there any other, I see a couple other hands. We have about 5 more minutes. Peter?
Hi, everyone. To the Conservation Commission, my hat off to you for being such strong proponents of the environment. I think some people know that I'm an environmentalist, and I've got 2 questions. One is, John or anyone else, have you computed what net revenues you might get from fees, net revenues, not including expenses, each year, let's say for the first 2 years, 3 years? And my second question is the town prepared to undertake the legal fees it might take to battle with a strong violator, where the DEP has the pockets to do that? The town may or may not have the deep pockets and the will to spend a good deal of money enforcing the bylaw if it comes down to that. Thank you.
John, Chris, let me say this, Peter. Of the cases I'm aware of, just the threat that we have the ability to do it, 2 of them that I know of would deal with it themselves, but they're not doing anything because we have absolutely no teeth at this particular time. But if we had that, I don't think it would end up in court. I don't think we'd end up with great expenses. The idea that we had that tool, I think, would be very helpful for us in enforcing the bylaw.
Okay.
Regarding Peter's other point, it's a few $1,000s. It's not a lot of money, but it's just so it's not big buckets of money. It's a few $1,000s. The total was tallied before. I just don't have it offhand as an estimate.
Okay, shall we move on to the next question? Sue?
Am I unmuted?
You are. Now
Oh,
you're.
there I am.
There you go.
Okay, my question is about the wetlands bylaw, but instead for the selectmen. I asked at a recent meeting, or at least a recent forum that they had, is there any chance that the selectmen can get us comments as residents from the different committees and boards that they have spoken to? I'm not looking for a vote of yes or no, but some of their comments and feedback. I know they've talked to agriculture and finance and ZBA. I think, there's a few of us residents that would really like to see those comments.
Oh, are you talking about recommendations on warrant articles?
About the wetlands bylaw specifically. I know that, conservation has gone to all of those boards. And I'd like to hear some of their comments back about it.
We did talk about recommendations on warrant articles, and clearly we haven't made a decision one way or the other. Go
I'm
ahead.
talking other boards.
But like agriculture wrote up their what
Right.
they thought was great about it and what they had
Right,
concerns
right.
about it. And I'm sure that's I don't know where the right public forum is to post that. I don't know if the other committees have done such a formal write-up or vote on it. But at least I know conservation, I mean, that agriculture commission had. Margaret?
Right.
The other boards and committees, anybody who's heard a presentation on this should have minutes reflecting any discussions. So at the
Okay.
very least, they should have that.
Okay.
I know that, and John, maybe you can add to this. I know that conservation went to ZBA. Did you go to other groups too?
I have lost track.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Planning board.
Yeah.
If I could.
yeah.
Planning board, okay.
Yeah, so ZBA, planning, finance. The only one that we haven't been able to coordinate with is the Board of Health. We were on their agenda one night, but John and I didn't realize that. And but I have talked several times with Paul McKelk directly, and I know Sue came to our public forum. So I think the only one that we haven't presented to at all in any fashion is Bobby Wheeler.
Okay. No, thank you.
And Bill Brookings also came to our public forum.
No, I just think it would be helpful sometime if some of the residents could hear some of the comments from those boards, if possible. And that's all I have.
Well, like Margaret said, you can check minutes and see if there's anything posted. I believe I want to thank Conservation for coming and giving us an overview of the wetlands bylaw. It was nice to see so many of you here.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
Yes, thanks.
And John, you may want to actually mention that, are you not having a presentation on Sunday also?
We are at 2 p.m. at South Commons. We're having an open air presentation. To more opportunity to talk and discuss and whatever. I'm willing to talk to anybody about it.
That's great.
So yes.
I'd like to suggest that you find ways to publicize that other than electronically. And I just say that there are many of our voters that don't function electronically. And while we've gotten so accustomed during COVID to doing a lot of these electronic meetings, you don't reach those folks. So it's an important thing that you're having that kind of an open air discussion. And it would be really good if you make any other efforts to get the word out in ways that people that don't use computers or cell phones might just find out about.
Do you have suggestions?
Well, can I comment on what we have done?
Yes.
There is a poster at Balance Rock Farm. There is a poster at the general store, and it will be in the calendar of events for May in the item coming out tomorrow. So doing our best, trying to figure out different ways to do it. And that's what we have managed to do in time.
Well, we appreciate your efforts.
And if I could just add, we did talk to agriculture, as was said, and we had town council look the whole thing over with a fine tooth comb. So yeah, we're doing our best.
Okay. Peg, do you have one more question?
No, it's just to Carolyn, email Dave Smith at Highway. He put up the coffee talk tonight on the Blinky sign. So if you can get to him for tomorrow, he'll probably be able to put something up. So that's a good spot around that rotary for folks to get to.
We'll do that as soon as we're done here.
You'll take care of that, Carolyn?
Yeah, I will.
Thank you very much.
Louise, do you have something very quickly?
Yes, I just wanted to say there's also a poster at the post office.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Louise.
Yes.
Now we just have to all leave our houses and go out and see these posters. All right. Well, next thing on the agenda is Articles 27.
Thank you, everyone, Conservation.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna go eat dinner. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna stick around for planning.
Okay. And that's what's up next is Articles 27 through 32, the proposed amendments to the zoning bylaws. And we have another 30 minutes, including the Q&A. And is it Carolyn? Is it you who's speaking or is it Tom?
No, it's Tom.
Okay.
I'm here for moral support.
Okay.
A wing
Tom
person
Stanford.
tonight.
Yeah.
All right.
Wing lady.
Wing lady, that's right. Yes. Good evening, everybody. So I'm not going to read all of the motions, but motions that we have for the annual town meeting. On this past Tuesday, the planning board took a vote on to support Articles 27 through 30 plus 32, and the vote was 4 in favor, 0 opposed. And we voted to support Article 31, which was the marijuana amended to 3 permitted, and we voted 4 in favor, 0 against to support that. So basically the summary is the first article on number 27, the home-based contracting. We want to add a new section. The business must be owned and operated by a resident of the dwelling. And the idea is that home-based businesses in the agricultural residential area is for a citizen to basically take a business, incubate it, get it going, and grow it. But once it gets to a certain size, the idea is okay, now you're legit, you need to move to an appropriate space and what have you. And we've had a couple of instances where people have decided that they've matured out of their dwelling, but they still wanted to run the business out of that specific dwelling. And they've moved on, but they've left their renter basically there and, you know, as the occupant, if you will, of that. And they don't have the same, you know, vested interest that the person operating it, owning and operating it would. The second motion, the next motion, Article 28, is to amend the home-based contracting by adding as registered with the RMV after every instance where GVW appears. And that is to resolve some disputes that have arisen where people have argued that their over-the-road vehicle should be allowed there, and there was no, you know, definition. The definitions were too loosey-goosey in order to be able to create some teeth behind this. So that's what the attempt there to rectify that. Article 29 is to change the in-law apartment in section 512, adding the maximum size by adding, including the proposed addition or modification after the total floor area. And that is an attempt to have, so the person that's building the in-law apartment doesn't outsize the dwelling that it's being attached to. In other words, they make a huge addition to it. They flip-flop, the original house becomes the in-law, and now they have this giant, you know, house that they're occupying. The next article is Article number 30, and that one is for the town to amend the section 710 common driveways by adding a new section 716.8. And basically it's to any changes, material changes in the a common driveway, such as a change in elevation or a redirecting of water or making a material change that's beyond what was permitted originally, needs to come back before our board. And if it's determined that the change is substantial enough, we may require a new public hearing and go through the whole process again. And that's basically to give the planning board some authority to be able to weigh in on changes that are made to stuff that's permitted by us that's changed downstream several years later or what have you, just so we have a voice in what goes on and it just doesn't get altered to where we just don't want that. Article 32 was to amend the section 320 principal use table to allow for a residential care facility not greater than 6 beds to be located in the limited business district. The current law prohibits this to exist. And we've had a proponent come before us and inquire about this, and we thought it may be a good idea. And it's not substantial enough that it will be, a large facility. That would be a separate, we could do an overlay, we could do a bunch of different things, but we thought that this would be more consistent with the use table as it is now. And then the last motion, the one, Article 31, which we voted separately, was the medical, actually the adult use marijuana establishments being capped at a number of 3. And originally, when we put this together over a year ago, we were remiss because at the time it was very close to 2 establishments, and that's what we adopted. Since then, we found that we're actually a fraction and we should have rounded up to the next whole number. So hence our desire to make an amendment on the town floor to make it 3 and then vote that at the town meeting. And that's basically our articles in summary form.
Okay, thanks, Tom. Are there any questions?
I could.
Scott?
So, Tom, to be clear, for the marijuana businesses, if I can word this without being confusing, 3 is the lowest maximum that we could put together.
Correct.
And that's why it had to go from 2 to 3, is not because we suddenly had 3 businesses that were interested. It was because of state law lets us set a maximum, and that is the lowest that we're allowed to set as a maximum.
That's correct. And it's a formulation, and it wound up, I think we're 2.4 or 2 point something. And my argument that it was less than a half and it should go lower didn't fly. So we have to round up to the next whole number. If it becomes very problematic, the backup plan for the planning board is we'll pass over this and take it up at another, maybe a fall town meeting if there was one posted, or next year. We don't foresee that we're going to have 3 or more facilities dumped onto us in the next year. So
Right. Right. This is retail facilities.
this is retail
Correct.
facilities. That's correct.
And as of right now, there are no retail facilities operating in Berlin or attempting to operate in Berlin.
There's none. I know that the town has entered into a couple of possible development agreements, but I don't know as if the proponents have successfully moved on beyond the negotiations with them, with the town.
Okay. Barry?
And at the present time, there is no maximum set.
That's
So
correct.
therefore, any number could be done to a higher amount.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Well, I thank you both, Carolyn and Tom, for coming
Welcome.
and filling us in on the background. I really didn't understand exactly why it went from 2 to 3. Now I do.
Excuse me, Chris, I'm wondering if Carolyn would be willing to stay on to discuss the 2 Community Preservation Act budget articles, because I think, Carolyn, I think you're it from the committee here tonight.
Oh.
So would you be?
Sure.
Not to put you on the spot or anything.
I know.
but-
Well, might as well just get it all over with. Yeah, no, Tim was gonna come, but obviously, and that's fine. I believe, Margaret, between you and I, we can clarify, you know, I don't have it in front of me, but I'm happy to do that.
Okay. Margaret, did you want to do that first, or did you want to go on to the budget first?
Well, I'll let Chris, this is your meeting, so whatever you feel is appropriate. I'm here for the duration, so.
Carolyn, are you have other things planned for this evening, or?
I was just going to turn off the camera and listen to the rest of it. So I can be here and be called forward again if that's what you guys want.
All right, then why don't we go through, we'll move on to the regular next item, which is Article 18, and that's the FY22 budget. And we have, I believe, Scott Schultz from the Finance Committee to speak on the budget.
And Janet is also here from Finance.
Okay, great.
Hey, hello.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, hi, Scott.
Okay, so it's we have a balanced budget to present to the town. Some of the highlights of the budget come down to there is an increase in the overall tax levy, targeting our plans to target around 2.5%. So that's about a $306,000 increase in the overall tax levy in the budget. There are some definite positives overall in the budget, which significant reduction in our debt and interest. There was the Tohoto has done a refinance of the bond that produced significant savings, and also, of course, going from last year with the paying off of the ladder truck that also totaled into that. So that's overall $243,000 a reduction in debt in interest payments that the town needs to make. Most town budgets were level funded. Overall, there was a 2% COLA increase for employees' salaries. There was some adjustments due to studies that were done by the Personnel Committee to make sure that some salaries were kept in line, that weren't too far behind what other towns in the area were paying, so we can keep people. So you'll see some changes there. The major increase, if you see in the budget, is overall on the schools. There was a large increase in the Tohoto budget of over 6%. A large part of that increase is actually from the contractual obligation to the union contract with the teachers. And the other piece is a significant increase in SPED costs going into this fiscal year. Those were predominantly the two big items that caused the Tohoto number to jump to, I think, a 6.4% increase overall. So there was the kind of the general overall summary for the budget. I don't know if anybody has some other questions on those.
Scott, there's a contingency line again this year, like there was last year. Last year was much for COVID stuff. I actually, because for the select board, I know it's for this year, but if you could explain to others what it's both smaller this year and what its intent is.
Yes, the number for this year is also related to COVID. The other piece of that is related to the fact that we have some union contracts on the public safety side that are coming up. So you'll see that the salaries are level funded under like police and fire, but we know that there will be contract negotiations that will have a likelihood that there will be an increase. So there are additional funds placed there to fund whatever the changes are in those contracts.
Are there any other questions? Okay.
Scott, you did a great job. Thank you. The only thing that I would add at the moment, when people are looking at the expense budget, that there is a reduction in the bottom line of the operating budget of $80,176. So, as Scott said, overall, many budgets were level funded or had very, very slight increase, and there really was one budget area that saw the most significant growth. So overall, pretty conservative budget.
Did you have something you wanted to add, Janet?
No, I just wanted to thank Scott because he did a great job. That's all.
Oh,
Thanks.
okay. Are there any other questions for Finance Committee members? It's been a lot of long work, but I have to say, I think you all did a great job. And thank you so much for coming.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you both.
And the last thing on last thing on the agenda is other articles. How do you want to handle this, Margaret? Do you want to do just the one with Carolyn first? And
sure, yeah, we could do the Community Preservation Act, since that's new to the town this year, and at each town meeting, or annual town meeting at least, voters will be seeing Community Preservation Act articles. So Carolyn, I'll try. You can correct me. You can correct me as I go along. So I haven't had the luxury of spending all, every meeting, full meetings with the Community Preservation Committee, but there are two articles on this warrant from the Community Preservation Committee. Articles 4 and 17 are both Community Preservation Act annual budgets. The first is the budget for FY21. And in this budget, as you know, there are some mandated categories where money must be set aside. They're called, I don't know if they're called targeted reserves, but they are reserves for historic preservation, open space and recreation, and affordable housing. So those are the three mandatory categories where CPA funds must be set aside. So Article 4 puts Community Preservation Act funds that are derived from the Community Preservation Act surcharges into those mandated buckets, and puts the remaining amount into an overall CPA reserve. Is that correct, Carolyn? Okay.
Yep. So it's the 10% that's mandated by the CPA. And then I believe we have, so if we designate money to go of the 70% left, if we designate that to go towards anything specific, it has to go to that no matter when, forever. So but we are able to put it aside in a, Margaret, do you remember exactly what it's called? It's undesignated, I think.
Undesignated reserve. It's something to that effect, where it's the overall CPA pot of money, general funds, where those monies could be actually shifted to any one of those other mandatory categories for specific
at any time in the future.
So the FY21 article is a little late coming on because of the delay in establishing the Community Preservation Committee. So that's why two articles are being presented at this particular town meeting. Generally, the FY21 article would have been presented at last year's town meeting, and FY22 this year, but this is a catch-up year. So Article 18 is for the FY22 budget. And the FY20, hold on, let me find it.
I believe the only difference. Yeah, go ahead.
The FY22 budget puts those mandatory 10% set asides in each of those categories, the primary categories. And it also appropriates money from the reserve to the committee's administrative expenses and into the larger budgeted reserve. So it wraps up all of that into one article. Carolyn, if you'd like to expand on that.
So we are permitted to hold 5% of the remaining 70% balance for administrative costs. And that could be anything from I mean, really, it could be, you know, a lot of towns, if a project is funded by CPA, they'll make a banner or a sign to let the citizens know that this is where their CPA money is going to. It can be hiring consultants for a project, peer reviewers, it can be for anything. And then any of that money that's not spent goes back into the general fund the next year.
The CPA fund.
The
Only
CPA fund, I'm sorry, yes, not the general fund, yeah. The general CPA fund. And we will have to have this, we will have to do this every year. This will be a regular item on town meeting for the upcoming fiscal year every year, so that we have access to the funds. If we don't do this, we can't spend that money. So.
And the CPA, I understand, is working on the process by which requests would be presented to the committee and vetted by the committee to bring back to town meeting for approval. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We just finished, every year we have to do a CPA plan. So we just finished writing that. Tim may be in final edits, or it may be totally complete now. No, I think he's in final edits. He did have a couple questions. And that will be available at, you know, probably several places around town, the clerk's office, probably the library, as well as probably online for people to see kind of what the plan is for the town for CPA money, and that'll be updated every year as well.
When do you expect to start seeing, or when do you expect to start being able to entertain requests for Community Preservation Act funding?
So there was some discussion. So the first decision that needed to be made was, will it be a rolling entry, or will there be a deadline for entries for consideration? And my belief is that our current thinking is that a deadline for projects is a good idea. That way we can have an idea of all of the different projects that are that people are wanting to do, and kind of prioritize based on the funding that we have. So that is the current plan, and any recommendations we make have to be made at town meeting. So I believe, you know, and hopefully things will continue to open up as they have, and we will have a fall town meeting, but we could potentially have recommendations for fall town meeting.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
That's helpful. The wheels are turning.
Yes.
We do have a question from Peg.
What?
I know. Peg asked a question. So Carolyn, out of the, you know, the categories, historic, rec, etc., do you know approximately how much money they'll be getting and when they'll be getting it?
And these are really general numbers, but from what I understand, so the first year, which would have been fiscal year 20, we collected funds but did not get a matching, is a state match.
State match.
The second year, 21, we did collect funds, and that was about $260,000, and we received just under $200,000 as our match. So for FY 21, we have almost $500,000
Nice.
for CPA. And as long as the housing market stays good, we can expect about that for next year as well. And the
Because the
reason
money
it's
monies are derived from registry fees, the registry of deeds fees. so-
every filing that happens at the Registry of Deeds, there is a fee, there is a fee attached to that that goes into the state CPA fund. So the more real estate transactions happen, the more money is in that fund to be distributed.
So you're looking at about, thank you, about what, 50 grand-ish each?
Well, counting the first year, closer to 75.
Okay. And when will they have this money available to them? Ish?
After we pass this budget.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome.
Okay, we have another hand up. Janet?
Janet Lamey, 102 Derby Road. Can you just explain the administrative fee again? I thought I understood it, and then when you said it, I got confused again. So I need that explained to me. And am I correct in that each subgroup that there is, and I don't know if there's 3 or 4, they each get a piece of the pie? Or potentially one group could get it all for one project? How is that broken out? I just don't quite understand that either.
So there's 100% that's collected. Historical gets 10% of that. Open space recreation gets 10% of that. And the housing partnership gets 10% of that. So that leaves 70%. Of that, 5% can be held aside for administrative costs. And then the remaining 65% can get divided between the other 3 groups, can go to all one group, can go to 2 groups, that 65% can be divided however the town meeting sees fit.
So the town would get to vote on all of the individual projects.
All CPA projects get approved at town meeting. The committee, CPA committee, just takes applications and recommends to town meeting.
Would the town be able to know all of the applicants or just the ones you're recommending?
Carolyn, I believe there are hearing processes that are required
Okay.
for the proposed projects. So there would be a hearing process, Janet, that I believe, and I believe these would all be a matter of public records. So,
Sure.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Barry, do you have a question or comment?
A comment that also remember that those 3 are not the only possible ways we spend the money. We also can spend it on recreation and a couple of other things too.
Those are the 3 statutory categories.
Which don't have the earmarks that these do. But
Right.
they can be spent on those things as well. And that earmark money would likely be part of the money that's spent in any of those areas if they spend any in that area that year. If they don't spend any that year, it just accumulates until there is an expenditure in that area that year.
Right.
But I wanted to make sure that people knew there are additional things that can be used for besides those 3 as well.
And in the
Go ahead, Margaret, because
in the
I'm a little
warrant,
confused
there's
by
a
that.
summary below the FY21 Community Preservation Act budget article that actually takes verbatim from the Community Preservation Committee bylaw that, and so it describes all the, the breadth of categories.
Right, but it really all has to follow. So recreation is part of open space. And then affordable housing and historical. And that's anything that falls in those parameters is all this money can be spent on. And there are specific parameters, like for recreation, we can, I believe this is true, we can rehabilitate the fields, but we can't build a pool house. it can't be a building, that I know. So
And the
there's
funds-
definite, go ahead.
The funds can't be used for repairs. They have to
Correct.
be used for upgrades, renovations, things like that.
Right, but not yes,
maintenance.
right, not maintenance. Yep. So there are definitely specifics, but like for historical, we can use it to preserve historical documents. It's not just historical buildings. It's not just some of the community preservation coalition has an amazing website about what other communities have done with CPA funds. And I'm actually very excited, some of the ideas that we've already come up with. So I'm excited that we're going to have about $1 million that, that doesn't have to be on top of whatever annual budget is at town meeting that we can spend. I mean, that was the whole point of doing this, and it's turning out to be potentially really, really a good thing for the town.
Okay.
One additional thing in reply to what Janet asked. I believe that the way this works is that Community Preservation Committee recommends uses of that money. And town meeting either approves or rejects those.
Correct.
And can do it by item veto or whatever. But the town meeting cannot bypass the committee and ask to spend it on one of the other proposals that the committee didn't approve. All that can happen is that we go back and see if the committee will bring a different project next time. But the town meeting only has a kind of like a veto power over what the committee recommended, as opposed to the ability to overrule the committee by putting money someplace else.
I just had one more question, because you asked a question, Barry, that then gave me another thought. So of the groups of historical and housing and open space, and it's like, I don't know what the exact number is. It 10%? I might be wrong, but so say historical doesn't use their 10%. Does that next year, do they get to keep that money? That's where I'm confused. So their 10% next year will be 10% plus the 10%. So they can keep building it, and that won't be able to be used by anybody else. Is that correct? So what is defined in open space recreation? What is in that category?
Well, I mean, so Margaret, you have the chart right there in front of you?
Well, I have the summary. I'm sorry, I don't have the chart. I wish I did.
So Janet, there is a chart that will be in the warrant.
Oh, okay.
That lists that, and that's exactly why we included that. But I know it's passive recreation, and I do know that there is some allowances for organized recreation, but like I said, we can't build a pool with a locker room. That kind of, we can't build an indoor basketball facility. We can't, but we can probably renovate the tennis courts. So there are definitely specific guidelines about where the money can and can't be used.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Glad you stuck around, Carolyn.
Thanks,
Glutton for
Carolyn.
punishment.
Yeah. Okay, Margaret, are there other articles that anyone might want to discuss?
If I could, I was thinking 25 and 26 just deserve a few moments. Those are the parking enforcement ones.
Yes.
They're
and
another one
Chief-
where there's a lot of sort of verbiage, and I thought I saw the chief in the audience.
Chief's here.
So when I keep looking off, I keep reading the warrant. And not that I've read it 17 times already, but
Yeah, well, good evening. So I got, there are a couple two articles that cover parking enforcement in town. Obviously, we've seen quite a bit of commercial development and changes in town. And one thing that I don't think a lot of people realize is that we have no means of enforcing parking violations. So we even have some sections of roadway that are posted no parking. So what these two articles do, the first is to accept, I don't have it in front of you, but Chapter 90, Section 20D, I believe. And what that does is that allows the town to designate a parking clerk and ticketing system. So one of the most important things of this is that we have to have a parking clerk that handles hearings that's not part of the police department. It's an independent person from public safety. So that would allow us to do that and then to establish a uniform ticketing system. The second article is to allow the selectmen to come up with rules. So actually the fine structure and the parking violations that will be enforced, and for towing of certain vehicles. So if we have a vehicle now that impedes handicap ramps, handicap parking, there's no mechanism to have that vehicle removed. I think one of the most important ones that we have seen, we haven't really had to deal with too often though, is snow removal. If we get cars that are parked, we get people that happen to end up on vacation or something like that. Their cars are parked on the road. We have no legal mechanism to tow those cars out of the way in order to allow the highway department to remove snow. So Scott, you're right. There's a lot of verbiage in this, but it's actually those are just the excerpt or the actual statutes. But it's pretty simple what it really allows the town to do to then have a system for parking enforcement. I'll be quite honest. I don't expect that we would be writing a lot of parking violations, but I think we do need to have a system in place should something arise, and especially something to protect the town if there were a situation where a vehicle had to be towed.
Okay, thanks, Tom.
Thanks.
You also, excuse me, the chief and the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee also have the mobile LED radar speed signs on the warrant as well.
Yep. So these are something that came up last year, something actually that Margaret and I had discussed. And these signs, what we're talking about, are something that you've probably all seen. They're on 117 in Bolton and Lancaster, and they're in Northborough. So there's permanently affixed ones, and then there's ones that are very similar to those that are movable. So what we're asking for is those that are movable, and there's several reasons for that. So one is the immediate notification to a vehicle operator as to what their speed is. One thing that came out of our discussions actually after the traffic pilot in the town center was actually there was some discussion about this and people asking for these. But one of the things that they wanted to see and liked was actually positive enforcement. So when we make our final decisions on the purchase and get updated quotes, there's several vendors that we can choose from that have some that have, I wouldn't say negative connotation, but they sometimes have a frowny face, or they tell you to slow down, or they flash red that and tell you that you're going too fast. But there's ones that would have like a green smiley face or something to really tell you that you're doing the right thing. So that's something we're looking at. There's also a data collection component. One of the things that people have often come to me about is changing speed limits, setting speed limits. There's quite a lot of data collection that's required for that. What's nice about some of these signs and the different versions is they have embedded software that will do the traffic counts for you, track all the speeds of the vehicles. And one of the most important things in setting a speed limit is the speed limit gets set based on the 80th percentile. So basically the highest speed at which 80% of the motor vehicles are traveling at or under. And so that does all those calculations for you automatically versus having to pay a police officer to sit out there for hours to track the number of vehicles and fill out these very tedious charts. So there becomes a lot of flexibility in that. The other thing it does is it creates enforcement charts so that we can look at specific roadways and kind of evaluate the traffic patterns and see when's most effective to actually station a police officer out there and say, this is the time of day where we're seeing the most violations or the most egregious violations. And we can set times for officers to be in particular roadways to really target the enforcement to those serious violations. I think that's about it.
Well, Berlin's moving right up with the all the data collection between that and the voting, handheld voting.
Yeah, and I tell you, that was one of the takeaways from that traffic pilot.
Yeah.
That I was surprised about. Some of the people, I was surprised in their thought process and wanting the positive feedback signs, and I'm glad that that came out of it. And it's something that when we look at the grand scheme of things, it's something we can do at a relatively low cost to hopefully make the roadways a little bit safer.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Are there any other representatives that want to speak to any of the articles?
The only other article people can have their own opinions of what articles are, have discussion. The Article 24, which is about the study for advanced life support services. I know the chief is not here for that one, but if I could put in just a couple of good words for it, is that that this is an attempt to see whether or not we have, as a town, gotten to the point where doing our own sort of advanced life service. We do have an ambulance. It can do some very basic stuff. I think it's called basic life support, BLS now. This lets it do a little bit more advanced stuff. We actually have to pay for those services now, and we're paying for them as we get more calls. We're paying for them more often. And so this is actually spending some money to see if there is a model that we could use to bring that in-house and do that ourselves and save the town some money, and also shorten the amount of time it takes to get those advanced services to a call. I think this is part of the trend that has been going on for the past probably more than a decade, of as the town has gotten to the critical mass of our emergency services and fire services, just having some shorter and shorter response times. And all of those response times, every time that goes down, really can result in saving of lives and saving of property. And there's some great data out there that shows that we've actually been having some effect. We've had some great effects because of what we've done.
Okay. Margaret, were there any others that we should cover?
Well,
I think there's a hand up in the audience too.
Oh,
Is
I'm
there?
sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's Janet Leamy. I just wanted to thank Scott for bringing that up, because when that came to Finance Committee, I was like, oh, here we are spending money again on something. And I sat and listened to Chief Clark, and he gave such a great explanation to it that I went from, wow, this is really important. And we went from our little town to being dispatched and regionalized, and we also have had increased elderly in the town and utilizing ACLS from other towns, and the cost of that skyrocketed, as we all know. And I just I wanted to thank Scott. I wish I had thought to have brought that up, because I really do think it's a really important survey. And again, I'm not one for wanting to spend money to get information that I thought we already had, but I wanted to thank Scott, because I do think that is an important piece to get that information. And you might have somebody that you don't think needs advanced life support, and the basic life support people show up and go, oh my goodness. And now you're waiting even longer. And all those of us in medicine know that the sooner you get the best help is the best outcome. So it's really important. So thank you, Scott.
Welcome.
Yeah, and the other piece to this is life-saving, obviously, is the most critical piece. When the service is actually advanced to advanced life support from basic life support, there is a cost that's associated with that. So part of this would be evaluating the cost to see how the town can begin moving to that service in the most effective way. Understanding, of course, that there is a cost to it, and so all residents would have all voters would have eyes wide open with respect to future costs and service. It is important. Through the chair, we could touch on the capital article. I know John Mavretic is here from the Capital Planning Committee. And we could just kind of touch on the Capital Planning Committee's recommended projects if you'd like us to.
Sure.
Unless no one's interested.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know if John is gonna join us, but I'll go ahead and start. So on this year's capital plan, a few projects obviously did rise to the top. First of all, on town buildings, the town office is having a few problems. It's got a very aged rubber membrane roof that is leaking, and one of its two rooftop air handler units is non-functional now. It's been repaired several times. It's over 20 years old and it's non-functional. So those are two items that were really advocated for, in particular by Eloise, one of the capital planning committee members, and the select board was actually very clear about the need to replace the air handler sooner rather than later. Because if the other one goes, there is nothing. Item 3 on the capital budget grid
Right.
is annual.
Mark, do you want me to just share my screen and share the grid? And as you're talking, I'll scroll up and down.
Sure. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
If I can figure out how to do that without destroying everything.
Oh, you got it. Look at it. It's nice and big too. I can.
Yeah,
see.
I blew it up so it would be easier to see. Yep.
All right. So item 3 is the annual police cruiser replacement. The intent is to sell or trade the old SUV. And so that is being funded from Highland Commons Public Safety Mitigation Funds again this year, as it was last year or the past few years. The item 4 is the fire department's car 2 replacement, which is replacing an old pickup truck that the fire department has actually taken off the road. It is non-operational. It's, they've pulled the registration and the insurance on the vehicle. It is essentially scrap metal. So they are looking to replace that with a new pickup truck that would be able to haul items the department needs, as well as gear, firefighting gear after a fire that could be contaminated. They'd be able to put it in a safe place and not in one of the SUVs. Item 5, hot top. This is an annual capital item that supplements Chapter 90 funds due to the high cost of repaving roads. This supplemental funding is essential to actually tackle the road resurfacing needs in town. The next one is a loader replacement. The loader is over 20 years old. I don't know, maybe Janet Laney wants to speak to this because she says it so much more eloquently than I do. The description in this used to read an old, rusty, tired loader, and finance committee said, well, can we maybe just, update the language so that it says it's in poor condition. This loader is really on its last wheels, and it is time to replace the loader so that the highway department can do their jobs effectively.
I called it the Fred Flintstone.
That's
wheel,
it.
Because their feet were going through it and they could move it faster. I also believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, this was also the loader that they kind of had makeshift into something that they could also use to assist them. However, when OSHA came in, they said, nope, you can't do that. So they had to disassemble it. So hopefully by replacing the old one, not only will they not have Fred Flintstone feet running under it, but it will be able to be utilized for what they really needed it for. If I remember correctly, am I right?
That is absolutely correct, Janet. Yes, they had an attachment on the bucket to try to lift things, and that was not allowed by the Department of Labor Standards, who does enforce OSHA regulations. So they did have to remove it. This one hopefully will have the ability to be able to do that.
I want you to know, I still struggle with the idea that something is really, really old. It's from 2000, because in my universe, 2000 is like last year, not 21 years ago.
Well, you also have to realize that, and I'm not sure about this loader, but with living with a construction person, these equipments get exposed to the salt and now calcium, which is really actually a bigger problem of rusting than the salt is. We're seeing a lot more of equipment getting older faster since the introduction of calcium. So I do know that, you know, that could potentially be part of the problem, is that they're weathered. So you're taking better care of your cars and not exposing them to that, Scott.
Oh, no, I'm fine with replacing. I get that it's old. The idea that the 21 years is a long time for a device like that. It's just that 21 years is really 2000.
No, I understand. I was just teasing.
Was
Yeah.
Y2K. Now the
Yeah.
next, so that's a good segue into the next item, the wood chipper, which is 25 years old. It's very rusty. Most people have probably seen it in operation. The highway department has kept the thing going, but it is rusty. It is old. There are hazards that could be associated with it. It's been exposed to all kinds of conditions, and that is also due for replacement. In an attempt to try to complement this, the town has applied jointly with the town of Clinton for an efficiency and regionalization grant for a bucket truck to hopefully allow the department to be able to do more tree work in-house. And then the last item is from the Capital Planning Committee itself, and that's to fund the Capital Stabilization Fund that was established last year. The idea is to programmatically fund this special stabilization fund to be able to reduce debt service costs on major capital projects in the future. So this $125,000 goes a long way to actually building up those savings. So I think that's it for this article. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. And are there any questions? Peter Hoffman.
Hello, everyone again. A couple of easy questions. What was last year's budget? What's this year's proposed budget? And what's the percentage increase or decrease?
Operating budget, Peter?
Yes.
The decrease, there is a decrease from last year of $80,176 in the bottom line operating budget this year. It's gone down.
And the total is?
Total is $14,363,453.
Wow, that's impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rebecca?
Yeah, it's actually Eric again. I stole her computer. Just a quick question. I don't know if we've got anyone from the Board of Health who can speak to this, or if the Select Board or anyone else can speak to this. But last year we paid for, or we saw an increase in the amount for a dump sticker. And that rate increase was in the interest of making sure the town could afford to continue recycling. And I'm wondering if we could receive an update on whether or not we can afford recycling.
That's a good question. I don't know if there's anyone here. Well, Paul.
We've promoted Paul.
Paul McKellick?
But
or
he might not be at his computer. He might be listening from a distance.
Excuse me, Paul, are you there?
Paul is muted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that might be something that we could have the Board of Health come to a meeting of ours and talk to them, ask them about.
Yeah, I'd be grateful to hear hear what the condition of that is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I think we'll follow up and get something out.
Yeah.
Eric, this is Peg. I'm actually going to the Board of Health next week. I'm on their agenda. So if there's something specific that you have that you want to shoot me an email, I'd be happy to bring it up on your behalf and then see what we can do to get the answers back to everyone.
Sure, thank you.
You betcha.
And
Margaret?
Through the chair, since Peter is here, Chair of the Economic Development Committee, I wonder if he'd like to just quickly speak to his article, the EDC's article about the Welcome to Berlin signs.
Margaret, do you have a choice?
Well, you could say no, but then you'd be leaving it to me.
Right.
Yeah, I'll take my chances. No. So the back
Oop, he's muted.
I guess
Oh,
you
there
get
he
to
is.
you get to
There
see
we
my
are.
pretty face. And the strap around my shoulder, around my neck is a sling for my shoulder. Anyway, so the backstory is that the EDC felt we should do something welcoming for the town, and one of the welcoming ideas was a welcome sign at the 3 entry points to the town. So this sum of money plus hopefully business donations will pay for the welcome signs that we're developing, and we'll present to the select board once it's approved, if it is, and our ideas are in place. That's it.
Okay. I do see Paul. Paul has a hand.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
Peter.
Our pleasure.
Hello.
Hey, Paul.
Hello.
Hi, Paul.
Hello. Was somebody looking for me? I had a couple phone calls I had to deal with.
Yeah, that's fine.
So there was a question about the cost of the transfer station stickers, and essentially, correct me if I'm wrong, Amy, but was the cost going to go up?
With the increase.
With the increase, it was asking about recycling.
Simple answer to all of that. The good news is the only change in any of the pricing at the transfer station is that the cost of second and third stickers is going to go down from $50 each to $30. The basic sticker and pricing all remain the same as they were last year.
If I could step in, the question that I had actually was, we did see a rate increase last year to account for the increase in the cost of recycling. And I wanted to understand if we were successful in offsetting that additional cost with generated revenue. I want to make sure that when I bring my paper and cardboard and plastic and so forth to the transfer station, that it is being recycled responsibly.
Without following the trucks, I would have to say, yes, it is.
Thank you.
We get reimbursement on the cardboard, so that tells me that it is going through proper channels. We obviously get reimbursement on the scrap metals, paper and plastics. There is no recycling market ever since China shut us down a couple of years ago. They changed and wanted a higher product that the U.S. Really hasn't been capable of shipping because of contamination.
Sorry, to be clear, is the statement that plastic is no longer being recycled?
It's, to be honest, I would have to double check on that. To my knowledge, it's being recycled, but at a fairly stiff price.
And
there are some organizations that will take it, but they want to get paid for it.
Understood. And is Berlin participating by paying that heightened cost, or is Berlin not recycling plastic?
We are recycling plastic, and we are paying a heightened cost.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
No problem.
Well, I think we may, is there, oh.
There's one more question.
Another question, Janet.
No, that was an error, but I was just going to say that I know that the answer to Eric's question was at the minutes to the Board of Health, because they discussed that plastics and all of that at our Finance Committee meeting. So I was going to suggest if Paul wasn't there, he might be able to find the answer, but then Paul came on. So I tried to put my hand down, so I apologize.
That's okay. Okay, then. If there's no other articles that people want to talk about or have questions on, Margaret?
I have a couple. Eloise asked that I announce that folks can get their ballots during regular town clerk hours. The election is going to be on May 24th. It's going to be from 12 p.m. to 8 p.m., I believe. Is that right? I think that's correct.
Yep.
And people can get their ballots during town clerk hours. And she also wanted me to remind everyone that the annual town report is available online currently and will be mailed at the beginning of next week to all voting households. So that's already up at townofberlin.com, and it'll be mailed in hard copy to households early next week.
All right, very good. And I don't see any other hands raised. I really think we had a great turnout.
Yeah.
Glad people came
I
and
appreciate everyone who attended.
had a lot of information to absorb and good questions. Unfortunately, we're not going to talk about the citizens petitions articles tonight. Mary, do you have something?
Janet had her hand
I
up.
know this is a crazy thing, but I thought since you said we had a good turnout as a nurse, I just wanted to let you know that the UMass Hospital Felton Street still has vaccine openings for Friday the 30th and Monday, May 3rd. If people are interested, I'm on my, I just got an alert from the vaccines site. And there's quite a few of them, 8:30, 9, 10:15, 11:15, and even more on the third. So if people are still looking for vaccines, that's a good place to go right now.
What town is that in?
Marlboro.
It's Marlboro. If you just do Marriott vaccine, it brings you right to it. And I mean, they've got all sorts of openings right through May 4th, like, and you just book it. I'm sorry, Scott.
Right.
I'm done.
The news also said they're accepting a limited amount of walk-ins too.
Oh, yes, that was the other thing I wanted to say. I did get a call from work today saying they were allowing walk-ins, and a couple people did go. So just throwing that out there for those of you that are still looking. I don't know what they're offering for a vaccine at the moment. It's probably Pfizer or Moderna, but I'm not sure.
Well, go get your vax before the town meeting.
Yep.
Scott,
All good.
But it's nice.
Scott,
oops, sorry.
Have a
Yeah,
question.
I can answer some of that since I just went there yesterday.
I was saying
It's almost all Pfizer, but they have a little bit of Moderna. And somehow I got the luck of the draw of Moderna, but that's what they're giving. And it was run pretty efficiently and rather quickly. I had a later appointment the day. At first, it looked like the line was going to be ridiculous. And almost everybody there had an appointment. They were taking walk-ins. They finally stopped at 1 o'clock.
I'm so happy they have said, I'm so happy there's a regional site that's
Yes,
convenient
that's
for
what I was
folks now.
saying. All these elderly people having to drive to Fenway and
They were doing it.
in Gillette. I know Worcester also has quite a bit at Worcester State Hospital. Oh my God, I'm aging myself. Worcester State College has a site as well. So it's just a matter of going on and but it's opening up. So good luck to everyone.
Yeah, I have to say, I had my second Moderna and no, I didn't have any side effects, just a little sore arm. So, well, I think this completes our coffee talk for this evening. And I thank everybody for coming. And I guess I would ask the board if I could have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And seconded.
And we'll take a vote. Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.
Hawkins, aye. Thanks everyone for attending.